Hey everyone, everything you thought you knew or think you know about the new food pyramid, well, throw it out the window. Hi, I'm Kim McNicholas, and on this week's Ask NP Deidre, nurse practitioner Deidre with Aspire Wellness and Integrative Health is going to break down the new food pyramid, and we're going to find out what grade she gives it. Also, there are some things that you may not even know about this new such pyramid, period, such as how it actually raises the importance of gut health, right? NP Deidre, everything's about gut health.
It is about gut health, and I talk about it so much, but when these guidelines come out, you have to know I was like busting with excitement to talk about.
I love it. So I'm guessing that you're giving it a pretty high grade.
Yeah, I'm giving it an A plus with a little bonus.
Are you serious? So we talked to Dr. Michael Danziger, not to pit one against the other. You both have the solid grade right. He gives it an A minus versus an A plus. His reasoning, a little bit of criticism there as to the placement of the fish. He thinks the fish should be above the steak and the chicken. And he also thinks the olive oil should have been a little bit more high up. But other than that, he was like, it's perfect. It's been what he's been wanting to see for a very long time.
Okay, so I would agree with that, and I don't know that they just maybe lumped protein into one category, but he's
Yeah, where
right.
it fit, right? Wherever it
Yeah,
fit in that
and
scheme.
and made it look like a great theme, but I do agree fish is a better protein than steak. Um, the omega-3s and everything. Olive oil, yes, but the way that we just flipped the pyramid from anything we've ever thought where grains was supposed to be such a big thing back in the 80s and 90s, and here we've come so far with it. So
I mean, what was it? What was the thinking with the grains being on top? And I know that when you look at the Dean Ornish or Estelin heart disease reversal diets, they're all about the whole grains, whole grains, whole grains. And I know for when my dad was diagnosed with heart disease and he went to the dietitian and she said, absolutely not, that'll kill you because he had the MTHFR mutation. But according to the American Heart Association, quite a few people do have the MTHFR mutation, which is not considered in the initial pyramid and also some of the heart reversal diets, heart disease
exactly.
reversal.
Yeah, because when you have the MTHFR, you have difficulty breaking down processed folates. So you want to get that through food sources that are basically whole foods. And the grains that we have now and the gluten, like as you know, gluten free is such a big deal right now because there's so much inflammation and so many issues there. So I'm all for fiber, and I'm all for fiber in the form of vegetables,
Yep.
legumes, your fruits, things like that. So I feel like we can definitely be getting enough fiber, and flipping it this way really emphasizes the importance of proteins and fiber.
Okay, so break it down for us. What is your understanding of how we should be eating? How do we take this inverted pyramid and turn it into something tangible for our meal plate?
Yeah, and so when we look at this inverted pyramid here, it's that emphasis of, just simply put, whole foods, right? We need to be focusing on whole foods. Like, amen to the fact that we took cereals out of there, right? Because we know how bad cereals are for us. They're highly processed foods. And so that emphasis on, like, what I have always said is the single foods. Like your meat, that's your single food. Your vegetable, that's your single. It's not where you're going through the aisles and you're picking up stuff that's processed with 10 other ingredients. So it's really emphasizing that portion of things and taking out the highly processed foods. It's a variety, like I've said, eat the rainbow, a variety, 30 different vegetables, fruits and vegetables in a week, adding in your spices. That variety helps the microbiome. Um, you know, we do prioritize whole grains over kind of the refined grains. So that's taking out those cereals and those processed foods. But it's really nutrient dense. You know, that's what we're looking for, a really nutrient dense diet, getting rid of the sugars, and processed foods. When we go through the grocery store, we're always talking to people about like walk on the perimeter. That's where you need to
Mhm.
shop. Don't go down those aisles. First of all, they're tempting. Those foods are made to tempt us to want them, to crave them more. They're processed that way. They know how to market it for us. They know how to add in additives that will cause an addiction to those foods because when we look at things in a food that's highly addictive, it's going to be, salts and sugar foods. They become highly addictive. Even
Steak, steak. And by the way, we're going to, increase, climate change because everybody's going to be eating steak. And that was an article I literally read. And
yeah,
I was just like, whoa, 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 hold on here. I don't think it's telling you to eat an entire plate of saturated fats or prioritize saturated fats. If you actually read the guidelines, what do the guidelines say about protein choices?
it's really about prioritizing your proteins every meal. You want high quality. We've had episodes with regenerative farming, and like we understand the importance of the high quality meats.
Yeah.
So that's really important. Consuming a variety. So your protein is your eggs. It's not just about a steak, but most of us need about 90 grams of protein a day. I would say across the board, patients I see, like they're not hitting that. So we need those amino acids. It's not about just eating steak. So I can see where that misconception was there about that, but that's not the message they're trying to get out. It's like you used to, on the food pyramid, you used to be told to eat zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight and everything. And now they've moved that up almost double, 1.6, that range. And so it's just emphasizing the need for protein. Why do we need the protein? For the amino acids. There's so many processes in the body that we need the amino acids that become powerful messengers inside of us. So protein is doing that. So really swapping those, fried foods, those fried meats, those fried chicken, all the stuff that we're frying and just making it a whole food. To me, eating a steak over chicken nuggets that are fried, like all day long, I would tell my patient, you can have steak, you can have a piece of that in moderation. Like,
Right, and it's all about the portion size, and it's what, about 4 ounces of protein per meal in a sense for most
yeah,
people, the size the palm of your hand, that should be the amount of meat in a sense. If that's your protein choice, that's it shouldn't be. I mean, too bad for me, I have a really small hand. It's
yeah,
that's how I measure it for me versus when I serve my dad. He gets a larger portion, of course.
yeah. And he probably has a larger body weight too and has a
Yep.
higher need when we're looking at that 1.6 grams per kilogram. He does have a higher need for that. And I think it's really important if we think about like starting our breakfast, we should break our fast with a protein,
Okay.
and about 30 grams of a protein. Like that's a really important piece of how our diets should be. So I think that, um, just switching those daily habits. Eggs, they aren't the culprit of high cholesterol. I would tell you when we look at our diets, and pull apart and pick apart things, it is the highly processed seed oils and foods that we're eating. It's not these whole grains and whole food sources such as an egg or a piece of steak that's causing illness in this country. It's when we eat those good things with this whole standard American diet.
But making sure that you aren't loading up on saturated
Right.
fats, and I think that that has been the criticism, that they think that when we're talking about eating meats, they're talking about eating the skin of the chicken and eating the fattiest of fattiest steaks, and you were mentioning high quality, you know, meat, no matter what it is, you do want to make sure if it is meat, if it is red meat, that you want it grass fed, grass finish.
Yeah.
And I know it is more expensive, but you're not supposed to be eating steak anyway every single night. It's a nice treat. It's a good, you know, protein punch in one pack. But there's so many other proteins that you can eat that are more affordable. But really making sure that you have the wild fish if you can. But Dr. Danziger thinks that you could even eat the sardines and wild salmon and the tuna that are in a can.
Yeah. There are some really good sources of those that you're able to get. I like to ship my salmon. That's like I get it from one of those companies that ship from Alaska. That's important to me. The sourcing, it's a non-negotiable in my household anymore. But when I think of the quality of the food and how it makes me feel, you're looking for, you know, chicken that isn't the Costco chicken. They're probably going to hate me for that, but it's
No,
the,
I just saw a video about that. I
yeah,
was a little horrified.
yeah. Um, no, it's not about what's the easiest thing, but like if we were to just take some chicken breast and bake it up and, you know, saute it or something like that
Yeah.
and food prep, it's going to be like, I feel like this is going to really set the pace for kids in school and things like that, to emphasize that, because where does our food pyramid start? It really starts in the school systems, teaching those younger people. And we've taught for so long that it's okay to have these processed foods in moderation, but really this flipping it upside down like this and looking at it, it's like, no, that's not how we should be eating. And
It'll be
I,
nice to see if they have egg bites, which are so easy and affordable and quick for them to make for the schools versus a donut or a muffin.
yeah, or those little box cereals that they give them with the milks and everything, you know,
Yeah,
and
and they claim that they're a healthy meal and they're just giving them processed stuff that's causing inflammation in their bodies.
yeah, and we see that inflammation increase in, you know, children not being able to focus in school, and so our diet's such an important piece of that. And what I loved about this, when you pull off the recommendations, page 2, right at the bottom, gut health, it's like big,
No, did
big.
anyone get to page 2 aside from you? I
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything on gut health out in the mainstream media on this, so I can't wait to
yeah.
get the lowdown on this one.
I mean, their statement here, which we say all the time, your gut contains trillions of bacteria, right? It's an ecosystem. It's
Yeah.
called the microbiome. And I'm like, this is where I said Western medicine met functional, and it, like, I'm ready to go ham over this one. But a healthy diet and a balanced microbiome and healthy digestion. This is what they are saying, the USDA. So, and it says highly processed foods can disrupt this balance. Wild vegetables, fruits, fermented foods, and high fiber foods support a diverse microbiome, which may be beneficial for health. It is in there. It is there. It is what we have been saying for so long. Like, what took so long?
I know, but how does this translate? What do people do with that information? What do you think is going to happen nationwide to our food supply and all of the different products that we see, not around the perimeter, but down the middle of the aisles? Are we going to have to actually expand the cold food section?
I feel like, you know, getting out to your local farmers and to your doing the um, where they have the fruits and vegetables in your local areas. I think things like that will actually, you know, people will be more receptive of that. I know even with like um, the so my grandmother, here's a perfect example. Because of her age, she gets like monies that she can use at the farmers markets every year to buy fresh fruits and vegetables and everything. Like they give her this little bit of allotment of money, and that's it's so I feel like when the USDA is saying this is how we should eat, I'm really hopeful that we see more of that where monies can be allotted for that because we know on the SNAP card there are billions of dollars worth of SNAP money that goes towards soda every year. And so I think just kind of taking that back and being like, this is how we should eat, and we have to just start to do that. It would be nice. We already know that the dyes and cereals, like hopefully by 2027, those are all out of the processed cereals and everything. But I feel like there's a real change to really teach people like to eat like our ancestors did.
So, how can this good for us pyramid turn into not so good? Every single time we see something good come out, it gets abused somehow because the manufacturers get involved and they want to make a quick buck. Any ideas how this could be taken advantage of and abused?
Yeah, because they're gonna try to support a keto diet. And a keto diet isn't an all good. Like they include in these ketos like bacon, saturated fats, and things like that. And a keto diet isn't a one size fits all. So they could be like, but it's the biggest part of this pyramid protein, and like I could see that happening. So we'll be watching for that. But that is misinformation out there. So
Yeah, I've even seen that that some of the headlines, I guess everybody wants us to do a carnivore diet. Ooh, that's really good for us. But you know what's interesting is that when we had the CEO of the World Food Bank on and he was talking about regenerative ranching, he was talking about a study that um, contradicts a lot of the studies that have been out there about red meat and heart disease. And this new study, and I need to go back and find it because I should put it into the comments of this video, as people are going to say, what is she talking about? No, she can't be right. But there was, in fact, a study that showed that if you have the right meat with using regenerative ranching practices and you have grass-fed, grass-finished beef, it is actually good for you. What's not good for you are all of these cows that are eating all the grains, and they're kept in these confined areas, right? And he said you can tell good meat by looking out there at the ranch and seeing all the different colors out there that they're grazing in versus if you go down I-5 in California and you pass there's this one area that has all of these cows and it's just soil and bins of grains. That's what they're feeding on. And
yeah,
that's what they're eating. And I didn't realize with my MTHFR mutation that I was actually having a reaction when I was eating steak because the grains. And I
right.
thought that was interesting.
And I think that about even the chicken that we're eating and stuff, because chicken is
Yes.
a big thing in the area that I live in and everything, and they're feeding grains and things. And so it's, we need to get back to supporting our local farmers, those who are
Yeah.
doing regenerative farming, those who are doing it the right way, because there is a right way to do this. I know that historically, the whole reason was to feed our large population and mass produce, but how much food goes to waste, and how much are we throwing out, and what does that do to our environment? And so thoughtfully putting into like prepping and minimal waste and adding in avoiding sugars, avoiding those highly processed foods. I think that the education that they're offering in this new, food pyramid upside down. It's going to take some getting used to, but I think it's what we've been thinking for a long time in the functional medicine world. Like this needs to happen. People need this education to understand it.
So I have the challenge for you. I'm just putting this out there live. That it's going to be the I think that nurse practitioner Deidre is going to put together the new guide to the new food guide, all broken down step by step, page by page.
Okay, we can do that. We can really break it down and yeah. I mean, how much better do you feel when you eat like a really diverse, colorful meal that doesn't have a lot of inflammatory things versus something that you ran through a fast food for? I mean, we know it fuels us, so we need the education to teach everybody. And it starts, you know, I always say the food pyramid starts with our kids. That's who's going to learn it, probably more than us adults. So,
I think that we'll need our next episode actually to, where we talk about how to eat based on this new guide at affordable prices,
yeah,
and maybe take a whiz around or roll around the dollar store, because they do have quite a bit, of different food items. A lot of people do in our network shop there. They do have in many of these Dollar General's a frozen food section as well. You have to get there when they when they deliver, because that goes fast. But it would be worth taking a look and seeing if we could follow the food pyramid and make a meal out of what we find at the dollar store.
yeah, that's a challenge we should do. Yeah.
That, and I think we could do Walmart too, because we in our book, Food for Thought, that people can get on Amazon, um, actually we talk about going to Walmart. We sent one of our patients' wives to Walmart, and we said, find us all of the affordable foods, and show us the meals that you can make out of. And she was able to find bags of vegetables for like $1.27, I think was the cheapest price, $1.27 to $2.20 each. And
Yeah.
so you can get a lot of really good food, especially if you go frozen, and frozen foods are actually really healthy if they don't have all the other junk in it.
Right. If they're like frozen blueberries or frozen veggies, and that's a staple because sometimes, I mean, this isn't the season where we're growing broccoli in our gardens. And so I've got the frozen broccoli. That's my backup, you know, adding that in. I think just opportunity for us to get out into the public and see what's out there and just help others understand that eating these things versus the dollar cheeseburger.
Which is not a dollar anymore, actually. It's
Oh,
$10.
okay.
It's so
So,
crazy. I know, right? Seriously. Unreal. Those prices have gone up, and still people are opting for those, when now I find my dad was like, "Oh, let's go get a pizza tonight." I'm like, "Well, Dad, it's much less expensive if I just, get you some zucchini noodles, pull the scallops out of the freezer from the Great Alaskan Seafood that we order from, and mix in some frozen spinach and some frozen artichoke hearts, and I make a sauce out of walnut milk and bone broth, and it's delicious. And it much less expensive than going and grabbing a $30 pizza these days.
I know. And I think, yeah, you're right. It is about $30 for something like that.
Yep.
So,
Except for Douglas. Douglas, of course, he knows. Two for $5 at Burger King, you can get a double cheeseburger. I can't, I can't beat that. Maybe at least take the cheese. Well, they say that you can eat cheese. What do you think about dairy? I was actually kind of concerned about dairy, and even Dr. Danziger, he loves dairy, especially for diabetics. He always suggests low fat. I'm not a big dairy fan. I was told by a woman who was a dietitian, she had her PhD from Stanford, and she said that um, dairy, current dairy causes inflammation. And if you're going to eat dairy, she suggested only aged cheese.
that's really where I fall into that category.
Really, you too? Oh,
I
interesting.
recommend that because when you look at kind of studies and things like that, you're really thinking about what's the least inflammatory. So we know there are five foods that are the most inflammatory. And so dairy's one of them, gluten's one of them, corn, peanuts, and sugar. So those five things are cause inflammation in the body. And so it does talk in here about consuming dairy. And that's an area here where there's not like guidance on what dairy, so that could fall into just these maybe processed dairies, chocolate milk, for instance, things like that. But aged cheese is actually the best. It's less inflammatory.
And he wasn't as concerned about rennet. I'm concerned about rennet because it's genetically modified and sold to cheese companies by Pfizer, a pharmaceutical company. I know Pfizer is expensive, but I am still concerned. I always err on the side of eating cheeses from Europe.
Yeah. Um, I do that as well. That's what I go for. And also, like, we're always throwing, you see it at casseroles and all this cheese, but if I go to Chipotle for one, I don't even add cheese to it, not even there, because it doesn't take away from the taste of something if you add enough spices. So that's just a thing. If you don't add the cheese, it doesn't take away from the food. But I would say looking for good sources of dairy if you're going to do that, like the A2 milk and cheeses from the A2 cows. When we were out in Vermont a few years ago, we got to go to Crowley Creamery, and they are like one of the first cheese making places in the United States, and they still do it the old fashioned way, from A2 cows and all of that. And it was by far the best cheese I'd ever had. I've even ordered it and shipped it in on the holidays before, but it was so good. It's just this small place, but like you're looking at like, wow, this is how it used to be done. This is, and the taste is so much better. So,
A2. What's an A2 cow?
um, so my understanding of an A2 cow is, um, not a lot of genetic modification and things.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, see, why do we keep changing things? Let's just go back to the early times and let's just hunters and gatherers and just eat everything whole and natural. And on Instagram, I still follow, I think it's Lil Slipper, Lil Slipper, and she makes everything with fewer than 5 ingredients, I think it is, for every single one of her dishes. And it's fascinating that you can and things can be flavorful.
Yeah,
Just the fewer, the better.
exactly. Yeah.
So I want, go ahead.
I just think getting back to just thinking how our ancestors ate, you know, how they ate, and that's how our DNA was like, we're supposed to eat like that, hunters, gatherers.
How do you think that this will impact the processed meat industry, the beyond meats, I'm going to create a fish out of, fish cells, and I'm going to create more burger meat out of, just grow it in a lab out of cells from cows.
I'm not sure about that, and I actually am not comfortable with that myself. That's even happening, but we're seeing that happen where it's not real meats being processed and put in restaurants. Yeah, we don't want engineered meat, as Heinz is saying here. No engineered meat.
No.
Um, I think if we're enough of us are educated and our voice is strong enough, things will change. And that's what happened with the food pyramid. That's what happened with taking the dyes out. So I think coming together and being powerful in our voices and what we're saying, hopefully can stop that engineered meat or.
I think it's going to increase, unfortunately, because you have, that set of people that are all about, the fact that us eating meat is leading to climate change, and we're depleting the resources in the waters and on land, and we're just not going to have food to go around at some point. Um, I just personally think that, and this is just my opinion, but I think that the money and the time would be more, just would be better spent focusing on regenerative ranching practices, regenerative farming practices, and doing things in the right way, versus, as you said, with so much wasted food, not to create any sort of shortages. I don't think we'll have a shortage. I think there is a lot of waste that we just need to start working on protocols that could make what we have more responsible.
Exactly. I think just limiting our waste, we all have areas we can improve in, right? There's days, many of us probably walk into our fridge and we throw out half of it because we didn't eat it or we,
Yep.
made too much. And so just be mindful of that. It can start in our homes. It doesn't have to be like we're only responsible for what we do, right?
I love that. I think that's the best way to think, is just, thinking responsibly, but I'm still not going to be convinced that eating a lab grown salmon, and one of my friends is one of the advisors. He's a famous chef, and he's one of the advisors for a salmon growing company where they're actually growing salmon out of salmon cells. And they're injecting, I asked them about well, in the wild, they're eating all different types of stuff and algae, and that's how we get a lot of our nutrients, right? And they're like, oh, well, we can just inject them into there. We could add those, in separately. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think that we're going to have a rude awakening if we take it in that direction. We don't even know what these lab grown meats or processed meats are doing long term to our bodies.
Yeah. Just like we didn't know what adding dyes and all this stuff to these processed foods would do. And then here we are 50 years later, and we have an epidemic of diabetes, obesity, anxiety, depression. Like,
I know I'm not making friends here, but maybe except for you and except for maybe our studio audience. I'm hoping that people put in comments that they agree. Politics aside and all that aside, like, think logically. What is this doing to our bodies? No one knows. And so I personally don't want to be the guinea pig to find out. What we do know is whole foods actually are good for our bodies. Let's go back to the basics. And that's what you're saying this pyramid does. And also, it has additional benefits in terms of gut health. And is there anything more that we can add, on that in terms of the recommendations for what should be on your plate to improve your gut health?
I mean, they even in the gut health section talk about fermented foods. So that's your kimchi, kombucha, sauerkraut, those fermented foods are important. They feed the microbiome, and that's what we want to do. And I love that they're talking about the microbiome because I hope for a time when gut testing and understanding the microbiome is put into every chronic disease to help people to kind of reverse and reduce the amount of medications and the burden of medication they're on and just improve their symptoms. But it really, all chronic disease has a gut component to it.
Does it talk about how much of the fermented foods you should eat every day? I have like 4 bags I have fermented, I have beets, I have sauerkraut, and I have kimchi. And there's only so much because it's really bitter.
Yeah, yeah. It
And
doesn't
I was
talk
told you
about
can't
it.
cook it.
Yeah, it
Huh? It
doesn't
doesn't
talk
talk about it.
about it in the guidelines because I have them here in front of me, but it does mention adding that in. What I do know is about a half a cup a day is good when it comes to like sauerkraut, kimchi, and
Okay.
everything. So it's not a large amount, and it's enough. And if I think about my grandparents who used to take a head of cabbage from and then make sauerkraut and have it through the whole winter, and it didn't take a lot to kind of feed and add the microbiome, and so
That's interesting. I was reading a study on Japanese culture, and it was saying that fermented soy
yeah.
is it that is incredibly beneficial. I don't know if you could find that here in the States or how it tastes, but that's where you were mentioning that's the nattokinase, right?
Yes, a lot. Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
easier just in supplement form?
No, I think wasn't it, if I'm right, Heinz said miso, if that's.
Oh, miso. Yes. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes,
I thought,
Heinz, I could do miso. What about you?
yeah,
I don't know.
Miso soup?
I
yeah,
don't
that's
know.
what it's like
My
soup.
wife and I were asking what's kombucha, but miso soup, maybe.
Yeah. Kombucha is a fermented drink. I will tell people they are high with sugars in it. So when I tell people to add that, I would tell you just a shot of it, not the whole jar or anything, just a small amount. It doesn't, we don't have to overconsume.
I have a funny story. So I, my dad and I go down for Thanksgiving every year to Carlsbad, and we decided to stop at a little lunch place, and it was right on the water and had benches out there. And so we were being very casual, and my dad decided, hey, let's live it up a little bit. I'm gonna have a beer. And I saw canned kombucha. So I'm thinking, this is great. Well, I didn't really read the label. You know where I'm going with this. And I was drinking it and going, God, I know that it has some alcohol in it, but holy cow, this really is strong. And it turned out it was um, hard cider,
Oh,
kombucha hard cider. So yeah, I was feeling pretty good by that point. And then I took a nap.
yeah, I bet you were. I bet you were. And that's the
Full.
importance of looking at the labels beforehand.
I was feeling pretty good, and then I was I was out like a light. But yeah, don't make that mistake. Make sure you get the real deal. And yeah, only a little bit. I used to drink entire bottles of kombucha thinking it was good for me. Just like when the big soy craze, I used to go to Starbucks and I used to get a venti iced vanilla latte with only one pump of vanilla and only one shot of espresso because I wanted to drink mostly soy milk. And then they came out with a study in Marin because we had really high breast cancer rates. And they said, well, do the breast cancer rates coincide with the high consumption of soy? I don't know. So I stopped drinking it just cold. I don't know if there's any real correlation. It was just the article I read, and I thought, you know what, that's probably not good for me.
Yeah, the American Cancer Society says it's okay to do soy. They do put that out there, but I think overconsumption of anything could possibly be an issue.
Yeah, you tell me something's good for me, I'm gonna overdo it. You tell me artichokes are good for me, and then I
You're
end
like,
up
we need a
getting
fire hose. Let's fire hose
exactly.
up.
No, I started taking 8,000 milligrams of artichoke, and I realized what it was good for. You know where that's going. I was like, oh, yeah, mm, not leaving the house for a while.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Everything in moderation. But in summary, I know that Dr. Michael Danziger, our chief medical officer, gave the pyramid an A minus, and it was just purely placement, on that pyramid. He definitely wanted to see the fish in place of the steak and the chicken, moving those down a little bit. And the olive oil he wanted a little higher up. And so, but it makes sense if they were just trying to, it looks like they were just trying to make a really good design with everything fitting together. And just the idea is proteins at the top.
Yeah. I based my rating on not just the front page of it, but opening up and reading about the gut health and all of those recommendations there. So that's where I gave it a plus and a little bit of a bonus because we don't talk about in mainstream gut health as much as we should.
No, but hopefully this will open the conversation and move things forward. Because I know that since you've been talking about gut health, I've taken it really seriously, and I've noticed that my symptoms that I had the complications following I was one of those few with the COVID vaccine, is what it is, and after you had me focusing on the gut health and doing, gut restoration, supplementation, and then the acromansia to rebuild the gut lining, I've seen a huge difference in symptoms. And it's really worth, I tell everyone they should go see a functional medicine practitioner, get a stool test, right? An advanced one. The ones that they do inside the regular hospitals don't go far enough as far as what you've said before. They have to. It's worth spending the money on, going the extra mile.
It really is. Powerful things. I mean, I've treated patients with 30 years of chronic conditions and really got them to a place where they are significantly better. And I really think at the core of health, gut health needs to be always addressed and looked at. And, with this food pyramid, just think about you have the ability to turn on and turn off disease by what you put in your mouth. And so this food pyramid inverted like this with whole foods, a variety of those has the ability to turn off disease if you do it right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nurse Practitioner Deidre. And for those of you watching on YouTube, please make sure to like this video because YouTube prioritizes the videos that people like. And I think it's really important with general mainstream media um, having a very biased view on this and a very myopic view on the food pyramid. I really think it's great to get a video like this, which is unbiased, non-political, strictly from a functional medicine, point of view, out there further, so more people can use this pyramid to get healthy or to improve their health significantly. So do like this video if you can. Helps us a lot. Helps your friends, helps your neighbors, helps more people on YouTube. But also don't forget to subscribe to our channels as well for more great content like this. Nurse Practitioner Deidre is back every week. I think we have a personal story next week that we're going to be sharing. You have a guest that's going to be coming in, Nurse Practitioner Deidre?
I do. I have a guest who really struggled with menopause in a very high career driven job. And she really has a heart to tell her story and has went on to do a doctoral program on screening and getting the information out there on menopause and like what symptoms associate with that. So it's going to be powerful and I think impactful for many women. I really look forward to this.
And I think it's going to be very powerful, especially, when there's such a close tie between menopause and cardiovascular health for women. So this is definitely an episode you don't want to miss. Next week we'll get the everything scheduled. It'll be same bat channel, same bat time. But I'll get the promotion up in the next few days so that you can make sure to click on it and get notified. But again, subscribe to our channels, both our channel, youtube.com/the @ the way to my heart, but also take a moment, go over to Nurse Practitioner Deidre's channel. You might even be watching right now live on Nurse Practitioner Deidre's channel, and that's youtube.com/the Ask NP Deidre. But thanks everyone for joining us. And please go ahead and in comments, write more questions you may have about the pyramid. And if we get enough questions in, we'll get Nurse Practitioner Deidre back on and we'll start that guide for the new food guide.
Sounds good.